vision for intentionality, I think, was formed, and I'll give you a little bit of my background for those of you who don't know me, but it was really formed when I was meeting with a group of men here, probably 12 years ago. I don't remember exactly. Ron, I know Ron will be here, so Ron was one of the people in the room. But we were sitting there and getting together as men, and we were wrestling through issues of parenting and being husbands and just spiritual issues we were wrestling with. And I made some comment. I don't even really remember what the context of it, but it had to be some context of raising children. And I made this comment. I remember what I said because I remember I got such a, I won't call it a violent response, but I said, well, I got time for that. And then almost in unison, including at least two of them stood up. Now, maybe none of them did. It just felt like stood up and said, no, you don't. And if they were here, they would be laughing. There's at least two here in the fellowship still. And they said, no, you don't. And so that really implanted on me that, you know what? No, I don't. And I've got to be careful with the time I have. So just so I have context, you're going to raise your hand a couple of times. It's okay, because some of us have multiple children. How many here have children? I'm going to break it into three chunks. Under 5. Okay, so, woo! All right, you win. If we had a contest, you'd win. How about from, we'll call school age before teens, so 5 to 12-ish. Okay? And I know some of you can raise your hand every time I'm going to say this. How about between 13, in the teens then? So we'll just say 13, beyond. Yeah, I should start raising my hand. And then after, 20 and beyond. So, sorry, honey, there's only two of us that raised our hand in this one. Really? Oh, man. Oh, yeah, thanks, Tracy. We're all going down with the ship here. We're the only ones with over 20. So we've got more skewed to the left, but, we have a good distribution here. When you go through these phases, right, you go through the phase of directing. Really controlling should be the first one, because there is just a safety thing, right? When they first get up on their feet. I remember when we were getting excited about Matthew walking, at first we couldn't wait till he walked, and then as soon as he started walking, he hasn't stopped since. We were like, what were we thinking? It would have been good to wait till he was like 2 or 3, because he was just so there's that safety, right? I would just call that flat out controlling. And then you move into this directing phase, and then into this what I'll call coaching and developing, counseling and encouraging. And then there's this phase what I'll call caring for me and mom. Because I have a dear friend in Maryland that said, you just got to make sure that one of your children will do anything but put you in the home. And he goes, in my case, it's Judy, which was his daughter. And I think we got 2 that won't put us in the home. At one point I was questioning, but now I think I have 2 that won't put us in the home. So there's this whole caring for me and mom, as we go through that, because there's a relationship in that. And actually, we're living it right now because we are really parenting my parents as we're going through eventually will be the death of one within could be 3 to 4 months, and then making decisions with dad, which is just weird, right? But it's just part of that parenting and child relationship, just the dynamic changes. But the keys that I have to share with you is really, I'm going to tell you the answer now, and I'll tell you again at the end, so it's not even like a trick, like you have to figure it out as we go through this time. On your knees and in the book. You've heard Bill say that. I would tell you that our parenting skills started to develop on March 7th of 2001. And that was the day that Maggie and I came to know the Lord. And yes, that is Maggie and I at the same moment. I won't go through that testimony. It's pretty cool, though. But we came to know the Lord. We already were a parent. But I would say that was the day that we started to get into start to get the ability to actually learn how to parent. Fellowship. Men with men, women with women. Couples with couples, fellowship of believers, and I'm going to talk about a few little best practices there on that. No. That's the whole bullet. Learn to love that word. No. It's okay. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to kill you. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, grace. And grace for your husband or wife, grace for your children, and quite frankly, in many cases, grace for yourself. So you get sort of what planted this vision. Now, there's a picture there that would be there. Oh, it is there? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys were still figuring it out. So, no, not that picture. Yeah, that one. So you really can't tell, it's kind of dark, but there's like a marble in the middle of that container, right? And so I was at Maggie and I went to some retreat or something, and they had a men's section, and the guy said, put a marble in the container, go home and buy bags of marbles. And I bought bags of marbles, and put a marble in the container for every weekend you have left with your child. And at the time, Matthew was about 7 or 8. Matthew's 20 now. And I did that. And on August 8th, this is August 8th, I took this picture of 2016. That was the jar. Now, I wasn't perfect about taking one out every weekend, but that was August 8th. I took that picture, I sent it to a couple of guy friends of mine and said, guys, you're going to be here one day, because I'm a little bit older than a lot of my peers. And I said that, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it, like this is it, because we're bringing Matthew to college. It was just kind of surreal, like it got down to a marble. And the whole point was a visual reminder to spend those days wisely. And so this is Rebecca's container. This is my daughter. God gave us, Bill had a surprise, with Brett. I was that surprised. Brett, by the way, you and I are, that's it. I mean, there's like well over a decade between me and my siblings. In case of Rebecca, we adopted Rebecca, so we have a nice little gap there. So I've reloaded. We won't raise our hand for any of these other ones because, unless it's a miracle and I'm Abraham and Maggie Sarah, we're not going to have another one that I know of, but who knows, we'll end up with 4 more. So this is, I've reloaded this, and again, I don't pick it out every time, but this jar for Rebecca, now remember, Rebecca's my daughter, so it's going to be I'm not going to let her out of the house a few more years and I'll let Matthew out. We'll end up having that one. Also, if you could just show the other picture, this is the summation of my parenting experience. That Maggie and I have collected, and we've got an extra person there, which I'll explain. So Matthew's was actually the first one in our house. We have a really bizarre birth order. Matthew's the first one. He's 20 now. He's a sophomore at Moody Bible College. Some of you know him. Rebecca is, of course, Rebecca now is taller than me, so that's even funny. That's only a couple years ago. Adopted from China, and then Marco came to live with us from Colombia, South America, and was supposed to be there for a year. I would tell you it was like a well-thought-out deal, and then he stayed. And in 4 weeks, we're going to graduation from John Brown Small Christian College in Arkansas, and gave us an interesting set of parenting years as well. But it's been an absolute joy through that. So now, the other thing about this picture, Brandon Grayson, some of you know, when Maggie posted this picture on Facebook, we had been away from Indy for a couple of years, and he goes, dude, what is with the gray? Well, what's with the gray is when the wife pays the photographer, she looks like she's 29. I look like I'm Mr. Rogers, and I got more gray hair there than I do now. So, anyway, so that's our parenting experience. So, being intentional, and you can take that off. The marble is really more the good parent to anyone there, but you will be standing on August 8th of some year, which will be the weekend before you take somebody to college. I know some of you may, especially ones with the 0 to 5, and I know everybody says this, it's going to go in a blink of an eye, right? And it's going fast. I can't even believe how fast Rebecca's going, because a couple of years ago she had the bangs, right? I love the bangs there, but she's like, Dad, those bangs are horrible. But dads love the bangs, but then the girls think that's terrible when they get older. But be intentional with your parents. Live by decision, don't live by default. There are 3 types of people: people who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wondered what happened. Don't wonder what happened. And so while a lot of you, more of you raised the 0 to 5, do not get to the point where you wonder what happened. Ephesians 5:15 through 17. Because of that, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. So I say that, our journey of being better parents really started, even though Matthew was, I don't know how old he was at that point, probably 3 when we came to know the Lord. As we became in Christ and started to grow there, that's really where we started to gain our skills. We need to determine to make wise decisions based on the Bible are wise decisions. So a lot of this is going to be practical. This is not meant to be a sermon or anything like that. So I'm going to just share things, kind of like what Bill said, things that we've learned along the way. I will tell you, I'm pretty sure, I went through this again this morning, that none of these is original thought. So this is all credit through really fellowshipping with believers, going to things like this, and so forth. What are some obstacles to intentionality? What are some obstacles to being intentional? I'm going to, just like, there's not enough of you that I can call on you, so what would be an obstacle to intentionality? Laziness could be an obstacle to intentionality. Busyness. Right, it's almost like you read my notes. What's that? Selfishness. That's a great one, right? And we kind of like ourselves, right? You sort of think you don't, but if you looked in the mirror before you went out, like if you didn't care, you just walk out, right? And so you sort of do care. So we do love ourselves. Busyness. We're in a supersonic postmodern society known for busyness, increasing ability to deliver instantaneously. We find ourselves more hurried than we ever could have imagined. We've been doing this thing in the ministry I serve in about technology and margin your life and rest. And they said what technology has done is just increased velocity. It hasn't made your life easier, just increased velocity and lowered depth, right? Think about depth of relationships, depth of decisions, depths of things. I mean, that could be a whole nother series. I don't want to go there. So we've come a long way from the horse and buggy days, but we now have 24 hours a day to seem to be more restrictive. We never feel like we have enough time to accomplish everything. The clock keeps ticking. Maintain a 1,500-calorie diet, pick up the kids from soccer, keep our car insurance current. We lose touch with what's really important. We're like robots moving from task to task, overworked, overstressed, spiritually undernourished. Our culture promotes bigger and better. Whew. Who made these rules anyway? Satan loves to keep us running in circles, trying to beat the clock. If he can distract us, he can minimize our usefulness for the kingdom of God. Satan may be the prince of darkness, but he's also the duke of distraction. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. Satan wants you busy. Satan wants you distracted. It's one of the biggest obstacles. All the things that were said there are pride, selfishness, laziness. I will tell you, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. There's sometimes I come home and I want to on the couch, right? And then if your daughter says, can you help me with your math? And Maggie can attest to it. I'll be sitting on the couch. Rebecca will be in the other room. Say, Dad! And it's not like, Dad, just I love you. I know I'm about to go help with math. And you can tell by looking at my eyes, I'm like, I don't want to get up. Get up and go help her with her math. Unless you're not good at math, then send your wife. But the devil wants us to be busy. The devil wants us to be distracted. And it is one of the biggest obstacles to intentionality. I'm going to spend a few minutes on the impact of intentionality. I'm going to be a little bit harder on the fathers. And I know that we're in different situations. We have situations where there's single parenting and everything. And so there's opportunities to get influence through fellowship of believers of men in the lives of children. But statistics are overwhelming. I won't go through all of them, but you will greatly reduce the probability in either your children in prison, smoking, educational decisions, emotional behavior problems, suicide, premarital sex, subsequently pregnancy. There is a 22-time increase in the probability of attending church if it's the mother only. I mean, I had to check this 3 times. I knew it was higher. Now, I say regularly, not just occasionally, because there's 3 sets of statistics out there, kind of occasionally goes to church. But you want to talk a regular Bible believing, if the mother goes and the father doesn't, there's actually, it can be as low as 2% chance that they will go regularly. I know that may scare you, but there's a whole bunch of other things we can talk about that. And it gets as high as 44%. And so even if those are all half right, let's just double them, 4 and 20-something. If I told you there's a 5x increase, men, that your children would be regular church attenders, and this is something I watch older parents ache about, and I pray that we don't become one of those, but we'll work through that season if we do, go. They'll make more decisions about that than what the mother does. Now, if there's a single mom, there's 75% will end up in church, maybe not as regular, if they go than if they don't. So the influence is positive no matter what. But just think about it. I told you right now, lower chance of ending up in prison, smoking, making poor educational decisions, even finishing school, emotional behavior problems, suicide, premarital sex. You say, I want to hear what that is. Well, a lot of that has to do with being intentional. So what can you be intentional about? You know, I'm going to blow through a whole bunch of areas, but one of the things I want to tell you right now is what's one of the problems with a day like today? Like, what's the big problem with today? Like, after you're done, right? Because some of you have notes out and stuff. What's the big problem? George's like, that's not what you're supposed to be telling people. There's a problem. Being inside all day, yeah, that's a different problem. What could you walk away with? A lot of what? Ideas, but too many ideas, right? And so what I'm going to tell you right now is you're going to pick one. The ministry I have, we go through a structured thing, and every meeting I said, what's your one good idea? Because usually you have about 8, and I say, stop it. Because if you have 8, you'll walk out and do nothing. So really, I will tell you already, most important, I'll be blessed if you do one thing out of this. And by the way, remember, none of these are my original thoughts. So it's just things I've collected. And if raise your hand and you're in the teens and you're like, I should have started this a while ago. This is like a little bit like your mom would say. your past, I love this quote, your past can end right now. So God can redeem the time. Do not get hung up on that. Isaiah 43, 18 to 19, even though this was referring to the Israelites in return from the exile to Babylon, do not remember the former things, consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. And think about that lesson is for us. Or in Psalm 103, stop remembering what God forgot. Okay, it's okay to learn from it, but don't sit there and wallow in it. So no matter where you're at, no matter what ideas you come up with here, be encouraged that if you are actually already winning because you're in here, because that's in a level of intentionality. I know it's kind of wet, rainy, it's easy not to get out of the house, keep the sweats on. We were having like a little sweats discussion earlier, and I thought maybe I should just wear a regular shirt, but I would be in a sweatshirt. Anyway, because I was kind of going between the tie, because last night, you said, yeah, you got to have the tie, Dave. So it's just, that's a discussion from last night. You guys missed it. Let me just talk about the big lie, and then we're going to drop into some practical ideas. The first big lie, church. What? What's true at church when you walk in Sunday morning? What is true about you? Don't put on your pride. Just be honest. What's true when I look at you when you walk in? You're walking in, the music's playing, you're holding hands, you smell good, probably. Your kids are being behaved. We had that discussion at breakfast, like, what'd you tell your kids, man? They're just like, your kids were just beautiful, sitting in a row, and they were like well-behaved and well-mannered. Now, for Maggie and I, that used to be, if you say something bad in there, we're going to beat you within an inch of your life. No, the reality is, we see all the best, right? We see all the best when we come into church. Social media is the other one. And you're going to sound like I'm beating up on social media. And I'm not on Facebook, and so I'm not mad at you if you're on Facebook, but it is easy not to say something stupid on Facebook. The easiest way to do that is not be on Facebook. Because you only see, what do you only see on Facebook? Huh? The what? Venting. Well, you do see venting, yeah. Yeah, that's true, yeah. Which is absolutely not productive whatsoever. But then if you're talking about your life and your family, what do you see on there? All the pretty stuff. You see, I heard this term, and you got to be a little bit older to know what the A side is, because there's no such thing as an A side and a B side. But you only see the A side, right? The A side was the hit, and the B side on the little albums. You're all looking at me like, what? On the back was like the not so good song. You just see the A side, right? You don't see my kid was a C student. I burned dinner. I have no idea how to cook, and take a picture of that. You don't see the selfie with the bad hair or the love handles or pimple on the nose. Don't say, hey, my son's on academic probation. You see the report card with the A's on it. My student didn't make the soccer team. Kicked the goal into the others, the goal net. My violin playing child sounds like an elephant in heat. You don't hear these things. You just hear like their concert, violinists and things like that. I had a couple others, but they might not be appropriate. My student got the part in the horse's rear end of the school play. I thought that was a good one. These are not the things that people post, right? It's like they're the best of everything. Somebody's got to be not the best, because everybody else seems to be the best. But let me give you some statistics. The analysis shows people reported using the most platforms, so I know there's like multiple things you can do, are 3 times more likely to risk depression and anxiety. Which, by the way, that study isn't about kids. That's true of us in this room. Then people who use the least, 0 to 2 different social media things. All social media received higher marks for lower sleep quality, bullying, body image, fear of missing out is this big term called FOMO. Now that you fear you're going to miss out on something. And there's a recent study in University of Pittsburgh, 2.7 times increase in depression and anxiety. So if your kid is suffering from anxiety and depression, take away their social media first. By the way, it won't kill them. And get over it if their friends have it. Secondly, if you are, maybe you ought to. We all have those things, but it is just rampant. And there's study after study coming, and the issues with, it's the issue we're doing with our ministry, because the issue of depression, anxiety, suicide is unbelievable. It's kind of frightening. So let's dig into some practical ideas. First and foremost, what is the most important thing that you got to think about when you think about intentionality? What's the thing that you think you lack? Like, I don't have enough time. I mean, time's the big one. So I'm going to just start with time. I'm going to talk about spiritual. I'm going to talk about friends and some other things. And these are just literally practical ideas that we picked up along the way. So as some hit you, great. If they don't hit you, just move on, right? But many parents, a couple quotes I pulled out of this thing called Gathered Gold, which is a great place to get good quotes when you're doing sermons. But these actually were not they're usually always by like FB this or AM this, like all the famous like preachers had initials, I guess. But these were anonymous. But many parents give their children everything except themselves. And the best thing you can spend on your children is time, right? And maybe it's a good time to be thinking that because we're getting into Christmas. And that can be a time when we maybe spend. So here's about a half a dozen ideas I can kind of share with you. One is date your children. As a father, I got at a conference again. A guy said, just pick your birthday dates of your children. Now, I know if you have like 8, this is going to be a challenge. So you're going to come up with a strategy, right? But I go and have breakfast. I didn't have a big challenge because I had Matthew was on the 15th, Rebecca was on the 4th, and then when Marco was with us, he was on the 22nd. So I would just go out and take him to breakfast, right? You know, Matthew and Marco, unfortunately, were like expensive breakfast because they ate a lot of food. Rebecca was usually a cheap date, chocolate frosted donut, and a glass of water. She doesn't drink anything but water, but she's graduated now. She likes me to take her to Qdoba here, and that's like her thing. But take them to breakfast. Spend time with them. And Matthew and Marco, it was God, guns, and girls. And Rebecca, it's God, guns, and guys. So, you know, it doesn't have to be anything more complicated than that, but it's an opportunity to get into dialogue and discussion. You make it fun, right? I've never tried to make it a lecture. I've had a couple as they got older, but it's just meant to be a fun time. Also, husbands, encourage your wives to do it with their children. So Maggie and Matt did Starbucks in Maryland. Then they started doing sushi here when Matthew was home for college. Kind of made me feel left out because I like sushi. But they just had their time. And, you know, they may or may not know I would sort of steer it. I might have nudged Maggie or might have nudged Matt. I'm kind of revealing that secret now when I wasn't seeing them connecting. So make time for particularly opposite sex dating in that context, where the father's going out with the daughter and the daughter and the son with the mother, if you have that situation. Dinner time. You know, I've been blessed. 22 years we've been married, and I know that it's hard when you're a stay-at-home mom and things like that, but we have done pretty good at guarding, and I attribute a lot of that to Maggie, of guarding dinner. I work a lot. I will not hide from that. But the one thing I tried to be really diligent on is being home for dinner. I'm just checking to see in case Maggie goes, but I tried to be home for dinner, and I would work after, but that 6 to 8 got really guarded. And as I think back, I don't know, I don't have like any direct evidence, but it just seemed guarding that dinner time and the conversations and the things was really important. Guarded that time. On a business side, I've gotten into this discussion. There's this book called King Me. I got like this little bag of tricks here. This book called King Me, and there's an opening paragraph. You don't have to get the book, but it's what every son wants and needs from his father. And in there's a sentence there's a little intro paragraph about this guy that was basically a famous evangelist. And his calendar was booked solid, like you couldn't get him, right? He was like booked 1.5 years in advance. He was on the road, and he was preaching from here to there. And so in all tenses, right, he's preaching, right? He's doing good work, right? So I think it's even better that this is the illustration. Calls home, he's on the road somewhere, he calls home, he's going on to his next, preaching gig and all that kind of stuff. So all the things he's doing, you can say, yeah, for the Lord are good. Mother's exasperated, you got to do something with this son of mine. I'm about to kick him out to the curb. He's one step away from being like in juvie. And the father canceled the next 3 months, ended up getting a small little pastorate gig, got out of the limelight, and spent the last couple of years, teenage years, more at home than on the road. Any idea, because you might know if you know the story, whose father that was? The kid was James Dobson, who spent his life trying to impact parenting. But he was basically one step away from juvie, but his father was on the road in the name of providing and doing good work. It wasn't like he was on the road doing a bad, it was a good calling. But you've got to be able to be attuned to the time and the decision. Time in the evening. You got to find what I say is your thing, right? So for Matthew and I, it was ping pong. Big, heavy discussions would happen over ping pong. We turned ping pong into a high-calorie burning contact sport. We would play best out of 101 because, you had to have an odd number. Maggie thought it was kind of weird, but we would be down there. But that was also where, if I said, let's go play ping pong, if they said it, I'd just go down and play. If I said it, they knew, some kind of talk's going to happen, and so that's where serious topics happen. Rebecca and I, it's pool. So my daughter is not a concert violinist, astrophysicist, but she can beat you at 9 ball. And so when we go down there, we have some talks. And sometimes she knows if I'm asking, that's what's going to happen. And she has a little bit more, like she's 13, right? So she's like, oh, this is going to really, and Matthew's probably warned her. But other times it's just for fun. And I will tell you, some of the times that she's wanted to go down, I'm exhausted, right? And so you've got to encourage each other if you're exhausted, whether it be playing a game of ping pong, doing math problem. We had to make this thing, the Parthenon, we had to make 75 columns. And I would tell you, if I saw another column, I realized the directions said get balsa wood. Now I understand why it was balsa wood, because it's really hard to saw 75 little things that are hard. But, you know, get that thing that you do together and start doing together. Anybody ever watched the show The Middle? It like takes place in Indiana. I know yeah. So I kind of like it. It's like a dysfunctional family. You watch it and like, you know, it's wholesome. It's like there's not a lot of, there's not like swearing or anything like that. And but when you watch it, you're like, man, we got it together, because they're kind of a mess. It's fun, but they're a mess in a funny way. But there's this scene where Sue was the daughter. The family's name is Heck, and Sue, the father keeps, you know, he really relates to his son, like football and blah, blah, blah. And like every time he's in the kitchen, he goes, I need somebody to go to the hardware store with me. I need somebody to go. And she's in the background going, I will. And I need somebody to go to the Colts game with me, because it takes place in Indiana. And she just keeps going, I will. And as I see that scene, you know, it doesn't matter, especially fathers, if you don't think you relate, your daughter just wants to spend time with you. It may be more natural, and this is something I've had to learn. When we adopted, I remember the social worker said, what do you know about raising a daughter? Because at the time all we had was Matthew, and I said, and my house was all boys too, so I was raised with all boys. I said, I have absolutely no idea. And she goes, you'll be good, you know, because if you think you do, you're in trouble. And so, you know, just realize they want to spend time with you. So while Matthew and I would do ping pong and shooting and camping and hiking, you know, I remember when Becca was younger, I kept kind of a record. The thing that she really liked doing a lot is playing this game, Eureka. It doesn't really matter what it is, right? She's not the teacup kid, so if she was, I would have. She just wasn't that. And then for like 2 years, it was kind of wild. It was the NFL Red Zone. Like we would watch the NFL Red Zone and watch all the plays, and she would flip and flop around on the couch like it was, what is that? She's not interested anymore, but it was a small season. And she's not protesting or anything. She's just not into it anymore. So we're on to horses. The last thing on time is activities, guard activities. They are not going to be a professional baseball player, a concert violinist, and an astrophysicist by 13. So get that out of your head. What's your one activity? And I would tell you this one's hard, because everything in the culture pushes the other way. Have them in this club, this sport, this thing. We, you know, except for 1 or 2 times, it was one thing they were allowed to have. And what we, to best we could do it, we would also do that together. So you know, even Becca can tell you, you go to a soccer game. Like we would do it as a family. We would not necessarily divide if we could help it. We would just drag everybody to whatever it was. And so the kids, we limited, and we did a pretty good job. By the way, none of them are professional any of those things, and I think they're okay. And so you've really got to guard, because everything in your neighborhood, even in the church family, is pulling on the 7 things your kids got to be good at. And just since we're only one of 2 couples or 3 that raised their hand, I don't know that any of ours is a concert this, professional this, or whatever. But man, if they love the Lord, you win. So that's a little bit about that. And then being tired. Gang, I know it. Moms, dads, you got to spell each other. But whether they want to go down and play pool or ping pong, they need a math problem. My daughter the other day made this playhouse in the attic, and, you know, I had to crawl on my hands and knees. It's a little harder when you're over 50. And but, you know, they're excited about it. And so fixing something. I drag Rebecca now. I always drag Matthew. I drag Rebecca around, and she's handing me tools and things like that. It isn't really about that I need her to be an expert at that. Maybe she will be. It's just that we're spending time together. Have something together. Practical ideas on media. This one, I know we're going to have a session on media, but I know that, you know, in the future, we were, and I said, so I'm going to do a mini version. Not nearly as good as Brett would do, but, you know, he's going to have family time. But I will tell you, this is one where I tell you to be almost a vigilante. For us, there's a few rules that we've held well to, and there's others that I think we're still working through. But limit time. What's the average screen time that a kid spends right now across the country? It's not necessarily in your home, so I'm not asking you to tell me how many hours you think? Yeah, I wish it was. Huh? Yeah, it's 7. You got to separate TV from media time. So the TV is the average is 3, but it's as high as 7. So you do the math, okay? That's like an extra work week. That's like, I used to say if you could take 1 hour, you'd give yourself If you took 1 hour a day less of social media, you'd have 9 full work weeks. So for those of us in the work world, that's like 9 40-hour weeks. So if it's you, just take 1 hour less of whatever you're doing, whether it's Facebook or whether it's watching TV. It's like, if I told you had 9 more weeks to get your work done, you'd be like, a couple of you are already shaking your head like, dang, I could get a lot done. With your kids, like, they could be an astrophysicist, a conservation. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But it's a lot. But then the other thing is just an incessant amount of stuff coming in, okay? And so some rules we have in our home that have worked, again, very few of them are my original thoughts, nothing off of our main floor. The kids do not have a computer. We had always had a computer in a public space. They couldn't bring a laptop in the room. We have no TVs in the room. And if you have all these things, don't elbow each other or toe your shoulder, but you need to pray about it and so forth. We found this to be important. We didn't give a browser. It's gotten more complicated, I understand, but we didn't give a browser even to my son until a certain age. And then I have restrictions on every one of their phones. We have their passwords. We can look at them at any time. I have a Covenant Eyes on my phone. I mean, everybody needs protection. So, but nothing is off the main floor. Kids were never allowed as kids to bring anything electronic. Did something happen? I moved into, okay. Never have anything out of view or off. In our case, if you have a basement or a room, they couldn't bring it. TV, laptop, I know now everything's small, so can't do it. And if their friends can do it, too bad. It's always plugged in the kitchen at night. We always have full access. Pay attention to what they're going to. So, there's this little thing called plugged in. It's like an app, right? Anybody? So who knows what plugged in is? Raise your hand just real quick. Okay, so Brett, what's plugged in?
I use it for movie and TV reviews.
Yeah, so it uses for movie, TV reviews. And it's not like, what's those guys, Siskel and Ebert type of reviews. What it does is it breaks down, I'm going to pull one up, La La Land, right? I did not let my daughter see La La Land. If you let your kids see it, don't get worried. You got to work through this. I read it. By the way, Maggie and I read it because we realize we can't really go to anything. Quite frankly, we've decided PG is the cutoff. Every now and then we're able to find a PG-13, but it's gotten down to that bad. It'll show you positive elements, negative elements, but then spiritual content. Now, in La La Land, I guess there's a seeing pictures of church. That's the center of it. Now, by the way, it's okay that she goes to a movie that isn't spiritual if they only have a church. But then they break down sexual content. They break down violent content. This one had none. The thing that killed this one for me is crude and profane language. It had 1 F word, 4 S words. God's name is misused 8 times. That one's like not making the cut anymore. And that's the one that sort of gets my check in my spirit. And so, I don't think it'll make my kid all of a sudden cuss, but I fear it will numb them. And then God's name in vain. So even the S words, you could make a decision, decide to go or not go. So her friends all got to go. We didn't let her go. She seems to love me. She got over it. But I use that all the time. And so you don't get to see opening night movies. It's okay. They're crowded anyway. So because you got to wait till the next day before you get the review. So we had one last night. Literally, while Bill was teaching, there was a movie discussion. And Maggie and I didn't have a complete, similar opinion. There was like one thing. But it's a great resource to use. But pay attention. Nothing out of view. Computers facing wherever the public areas are. What are those things called? Covenant eyes, things like that on them. And not in their room. We used to have, like, I know the old, we used to have the phone that you could get to your room and it had like a cord, 50-foot cord, because our house wasn't that big. But you could, and the boys would take them into our room. But, if they want to go quiet on their cell phone, too bad. I don't let those in the rooms. Practical ideas on prayer. So that's a little bit on media. Practical ideas on prayer. I have a prayer list that I work through, and this is a whole discussion on prayer. But I have things that I pray for my children, for my wife. I'm not going to read you that list. You're not getting that one. But and she's definitely not going to show you the one she does for me because that's 3 pages. But I pray for protection for Matthew, Marco, Rebecca, and Maggie, physical, spiritual, and mental protection every day. I pray for relationships between Maggie and the kids. I have specific things I pray about their relationships depending on where they are. I pray daily for Matthew and Rebecca on some things. And then I have a list. Everything from making, I'll give you Matthew. I got permission from him. Making the faith his own, staying on the path, his calling in life, recognizing this God's calling, his future wife, her salvation, her safety, her purity, his relationship with his mother, his desire and focus to perform well in school, good, solid Christian friends, taking stands for the truth, sexual integrity, joy and success in soccer, our weekly time together, good decisions throughout the day. And I have a series of ones for Rebecca. Since she didn't necessarily give me permission, I won't share those, but you can imagine what a father might do for a daughter. So have the things that you pray for. Let them pray, right? I love that you might lead prayer in your home, whether it be dinner and other things, but it's okay to let them pray, and sometimes you learn, right? I'm listening to this book, Too Busy Not to Pray, on tape. There's no such thing, I guess, on tape anymore. That's pretty embarrassing. But the book on whatever it is now, In the Air or something. And the guy just talked about, it's great for them to see you do it, but, letting them do it. And sometimes children pray much better. He says, because this guy's a pastor, he says, sometimes people pray really theologically, and that's not like, it's just conversation with God, right? And Ed did it before, right? It's just sort of talking, right? It's not like, it's okay to do all those things, but just sometimes the prayer of a kid, Rebecca last night, it was beautiful, right? Some of it was about fun. A couple things were funny. And then it was about Grandma Gail, right, in the few months that she has left. And then she even kind of prayed about Dad, being okay with it, because this is the second wife that my dad has, is going to lose to cancer. And so, but it's just raw, right? It's not like overly spiritual. It's not like rehearsed. So let them pray. How to pray. The one thing I do want to share on prayer is, on this how to pray, is there was a season when I was like, Lord, could you just get a hold of my children? I don't see anything good happening, right? And we're in this sort of season. And it's kind of like home fellowship. We have home fellowships. If you have home fellowships and the kids are downstairs and you're the parent, what kid can you hear downstairs? Only yours, right? And by the way, your kid's whispering, right? But it sounds like they're yelling, right? And so that's sort of how we are, right? I watch it because I'm a home fellowship and I don't have any of those young kids anymore. So I watch the parents as we're doing the home fellowship. I'm like, oh yeah, they hear their kid, and their kid's barely whispering. They don't hear the kid screaming over there. And so forth. Well, the guy convicted me on prayer. He says, what are you praying for? He says, are you praying for God to get a hold of these kids? He goes, why don't you just go for a month and pray, God, reveal you at work in my kids. And so I made that slight pivot. By the way, we could do this for each other, right? God, reveal you at work in Rebecca's life. God, reveal you at work